When Eliza Moore got off that train in Nebraska, she was expecting to meet her future, a rancher husband she only knew from letters. Instead, she found a man bleeding out in the dust, left for dead as night was closing in. She had a choice: walk away to safety or drag a stranger 6 miles through the dark and risk it all. But see, Eliza had already lost everything once. She wasn't scared anymore. If you want to hear how a broke Boston girl became a Nebraska legend, you stick around. Go ahead and like this story and tell me what town you are from in the comments. Let's see how far Eliza's story can go. That November wind felt sharp and mean on the empty train platform. Eliza stood with her one small bag and watched the train disappear in a cloud of smoke. Beyond the station, the flat land stretched out so far, it made her feel small and lost. There wasn't a single thing that looked like home. She clutched her worn-out coat, a reminder of a better life before her father's debts swallowed everything. That life was gone, replaced by a choice between poverty or marrying a stranger named Marcus Brennan. Suddenly, a low groan cut through the wind. Eliza turned. There, at the end of the platform, a man was crumpled against the station wall. He was bent all wrong and dark stains were spreading across his shirt. His hair was matted with blood. Every sensible part of her screamed to run and to find help to stay out of it. But Boston had taught her a hard lesson. Sometimes when you wait for help, nobody comes. She walked right over to him. Up close, it was bad. His face was pale and his breathing was rough and shallow. Blood was leaking from a few different places. He looked young, maybe 30, with strong features that were going soft as his life drained away. "Sir," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, "can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open. They were a deep blue. A tremor shook his whole body, and fresh blood bubbled from a wound in his side. Eliza looked around, desperate. The station was empty. The town was quiet. It was clear no one was coming. They had just left him here today. And in that moment she knew, if she walked away, she would be the one letting him die. To hell with that. The thought felt right. She knelt beside him, not caring that the blood was ruining her dress. "Sir, I need you to listen." He finally focused on her. "Where am I?" he whispered. "The train station," she said, keeping her voice calm. "You are hurt bad. I am going to get you help. Where do you need to go?" "Whitmore Ranch," he struggled to say. 6 miles north." 6 miles. The words hit her like a punch. How could she move a dying man 6 miles in the dark? His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His eyes begged her, "Please do not leave me." And that was it. That was the moment. All her life she'd been taught to be respectable, to be proper. But she'd learned that being proper didn't protect you from anything. She looked at the man bleeding in the dirt and made a choice from the gut. "I will not," she promised, "but you have to help me." The next hour was a blur of pure will. She ran to the station office and banged on the door until a drunk and angry agent opened it. He saw the blood and tried to shut the door. She shoved her foot in the way. "I need a wagon now." "Not my problem, lady," he slurred. "There is no sheriff here, is there?" Eliza's voice was cold and sharp. "Because if there was, he would have been here already. So you will give me a wagon, or I will scream loud enough for this whole town to hear how you let a man die while you got drunk." That did it. 10 minutes later, she had an old buckboard and a tired horse. Getting the man into that wagon almost broke her. He was all dead weight. But she gritted her teeth, got her shoulder under him, and hauled. He groaned in pain, and she almost dropped him. "Stay with me," she panted. "Just a little more." Somehow she got him in. She put her bag under his head for a pillow and used her own clothes to bandage his wounds. The station agent just watched from his doorway. "You are a fool, you know that?" Eliza grabbed the reins. "I have been called worse." She had never driven a wagon before, but she had never done a lot of things before her world fell apart. She figured you can learn just about anything when you have no other choice. The road north was a dark, bumpy nightmare. Every jolt of the wagon brought a fresh sound of pain from the back. Eliza just stared into the darkness and held on tight. The sky filled with more stars than she had ever seen in her life. A coyote howled somewhere out on the prairie, and in the back of the wagon, the man she was trying to save was still breathing. To keep herself awake, she started to talk. "My name is Eliza Moore. I came here to marry a rancher named Marcus Brennan, a man I have never even met. I agreed to it because I had $4 to my name and winter was on its way. She gave a short, bitter laugh. I do not even know who you are. You could be a bank robber for all I know. That man deserved every last thing that happened to him. The only sound was the creak of the wagon and the steady plod of the horses. But that was a choice made back on that train platform, and she would live with it. Around midnight, the dark finally broke with a few yellow lights. It was just a handful of windows, but it was enough to make her feel a knot of relief in her throat. Soon, a sprawling ranch house appeared out of the blackness, solid and built to last. As she guided the wagon into the yard, the front door swung open. A woman stood in the light, her body tense. Who's out there? Her voice was sharp and older. Eliza climbed down, her legs shaking from the long ride. My name is Eliza Moore. I found a man at the train station. Hurt real bad. He said Whitmore Ranch, 6 miles north. The woman was already shouting back into the house. Thomas! Miguel, get out here now! Two men came running. One was older and lean. The other was younger and built solid as an oak tree. Their eyes landed on the wagon, and Eliza saw the moment they recognized the man bleeding in the back. Dear Lord, the woman's voice cracked. That's Daniel. That's Mr. Whitmore. In a heartbeat, everything was chaos. The men carefully lifted Daniel and carried him inside while the woman Martha yelled out orders. Someone rode off to fetch the doctor. Lamps were lit all through the house, and Eliza just stood there in the yard, forgotten. She had done it. She had brought him home alive, just like she promised, but all she felt was tired, a deep-down empty exhaustion. Martha came back out, her face a mask of worry, but her eyes were sharp. You brought him all this way by yourself? Yes, ma'am. 6 miles in the pitch black. I bet you never drove a wagon before in your life. No, ma'am. Something shifted in Martha's face, something almost like respect. Well, you're either the bravest soul I've ever met or the biggest fool. Come on inside before you fall over. The house was warm and smelled like coffee and wood smoke. It was a comforting smell that made her ache for home. Martha handed her a hot cup and pointed to a chair. Drink this. Then you can tell me who you are and what you were doing at that station. So Eliza told her everything. She talked about Boston, the advertisement, and Marcus Brennan, the man she was supposed to marry. Martha listened, her face unreadable. When Eliza finished, Martha was quiet for a long time. Marcus Brennan's ranch is 12 miles south of here. You went the wrong way. Of course she had. I should go. As soon as it's light, You should rest, Martha said, her voice a little softer. Brennan can wait. You just saved Daniel Whitmore's life. He's one of the good ones. He built this place from the ground up. If he makes it through the night, it's because of you. But all Eliza could hear was, if he makes it. Just then, the older ranch hand, Thomas, appeared in the doorway. His face was grim. Doc is here. He says it's bad. Daniel lost a lot of blood. The bullets did a real number on him inside. He paused. He keeps asking for someone, a name we don't know. What name? Martha asked. Thomas looked straight at Eliza. He keeps asking for Eliza. The whole room went quiet. Eliza could feel their eyes on her, feel the weight of what that name meant. Martha stood up. Well, I suppose you'd better come with me. The bedroom had been turned into a makeshift surgery. A tired-looking doctor with steady hands worked over Daniel by the light of a lamp. Bloody rags were piled on a small table. Daniel was pale as a ghost, his breathing shallow, but his eyes were open and they were searching. When he saw Eliza, a look of relief washed over his face. You came, he whispered, his voice barely there. You didn't leave. Eliza walked right over to the bed and took his hand. It felt cold, and his grip was weak, but he held on. I promised I wouldn't, she said. His eyes locked with hers, and she could see he understood. It was as if he had heard every word she'd said to him on that long, dark ride. Thank you, he breathed. The doctor cleared his throat. He needs to rest, everyone out. He looked from Eliza to Martha, except for whoever he trusts the most right now. Martha gave a slow nod. Go on then, stay with him. I'll be right outside. And just like that, Eliza was alone with a man she'd only met a few hours ago, in a house she'd never seen, holding his life in her hands. She pulled a chair close and sat down, her hand still holding his. Outside, the first hints of dawn were painting the sky gray. She had been awake for more than 24 hours. She had crossed half the country and made a choice she still couldn't explain. But as Daniel's breathing steadied just a little and his hand relaxed in hers, she felt a strange sense of calm. She knew she was right where she was meant to be. The doctor worked all through the morning. Eliza watched him pull out the bullets and stitch the wounds that would leave scars, but might just save his life. She held Daniel's hand the whole time, whispering to him when the pain got too bad. "You're going to make it," she told him, as the sun finally streamed through the window. "You survived getting shot. You survived a 6-mile ride with someone who barely knew which end of the horse was which. You can survive this, too." His eyes opened for a second, clear through the pain. "Stubborn," he whispered. Eliza managed a small smile. "You have no idea." By the time the sun was fully up, the worst was over. The worst of it was over, for now. Daniel was alive, sleeping a deep, healing sleep. The doctor left Martha with a list of instructions, then tipped his hat to Eliza. "You did fine work last night. That binding, the way you laid him out. You likely saved his life before I ever saw him." He gave her a curious look. "Are you a nurse?" "No, I just did what had to be done." Well, he said, necessity sure can teach a person. He packed his bag and promised to return the next day. But before Eliza could even think about rest, Martha stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. "There is something you need to know. 3 armed men came by yesterday looking for Daniel. Thomas told them he was gone, and they said they would come back today." Eliza felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "Do you think they were the ones who shot him?" Martha's jaw was set like stone. It would be one heck of a coincidence if they were not. "They are from the Garrett Ranch, a big outfit that has been trying to swallow up all the little places around here for years. And Daniel is the main one who keeps telling them no. Why not just force him to sell? Because Daniel's land has the only steady water for 20 miles around. That creek is the lifeblood of this whole valley." Martha looked out the window. Without that water, the Garretts cannot grow. And without Daniel to protect his claim, they could take it all. Eliza saw the ugly picture clear as day. Get rid of the owner, cause a big mess, then use lawyers and threats to grab the land. "So they will be back," Eliza said, "and they will want to finish the job." Martha nodded. "That means we have to be ready. Thomas and Miguel are good men, but they are not gunfighters, and Daniel cannot even stand up." Eliza looked at the sleeping stranger whose life was now tied to hers. She thought about the life she had run from and the man she had left at the altar. "Then we had better make sure they do not get the chance," she said. "When are they coming?" "Around noon, maybe sooner." Eliza glanced at the sun. That gave them 4 hours at best. "Tell me everything," she said. "About this ranch, the water, the Garretts." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Are you fixing to take them on by yourself?" "I am planning on not letting them harm the man I spent all night saving." Eliza's voice was firm. "I did not haul him 6 miles through the dark just to see him die here." For the first time, a real smile broke across Martha's face. "You know, I think Daniel got luckier than he knows when you turned up." "Maybe," Eliza said, her shoulders straight despite her weariness. "Or maybe we both did. Now tell me about this creek. We need to know exactly what we are fighting for." As Martha talked, explaining the tangled mess of land deeds and power grabs, Eliza felt a change inside her. The frightened woman who had fled Boston was gone. In her place was someone who knew that sometimes you have to stop running and start fighting. She had saved Daniel's life out of pure instinct. Now she would save his ranch with a clear head and a strong will. If the Garretts wanted a fight, they were about to find out that the woman who carried a dying man through the wilderness was not the kind to back down. Martha spread old maps on the kitchen table, showing a story of pure greed. Eliza traced the blue line of the creek that kept the entire valley alive. "The Garretts have been buying up properties for 3 years," Martha said, pointing to each one. "They wait for folks to hit hard times, then make an offer." She scoffed. "They promise a fair price, but the families leave with next to nothing. And they cannot get to that water without this ranch." "Exactly. And Daniel will not sell. His father built this place, and Daniel gave him his word. The Garretts tried to buy him out 2 years ago. When he said no, they took him to court over the water rights, claiming the creek was public land. They lost every time." Eliza looked at the map. So shooting him was their next plan, or their last one. "James Garrett is a smart man, A public shooting would bring in the marshals, but an ambush that looked like a robbery? That is easy enough to blame on drifters, with no one asking too many questions. Hoofbeats outside made them both go still. Through the window, Eliza saw three men riding in. They looked like they owned the whole world. The man in the lead was about 40, dressed well, with a look that said he had never been told no. "That is James Garrett," Martha whispered. "The one to his left is his brother, Cole. The other is Wade Tucker, their foreman and the meanest man in the county." Eliza's heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "Wake up Thomas and Miguel. Tell them to stay near, but stay hidden. And, Martha," she looked right at the older woman, "no matter what happens, do not tell them Daniel is here. They will want to search the house. Let them. If they think he is still out there somewhere, they might be more careful about their next move." Martha stared at her. "You are either the smartest or the craziest woman I have ever met. I will decide which later." Eliza walked out onto the porch alone. The morning sun was at her back, making it hard for the riders to see her clearly as James Garrett pulled his horse to a stop. The rider's face soured. "Who in the hell are you, Yahio?" he demanded. "Eliza Moore," she said calmly, "and this is private land." His eyes narrowed. "We are looking for Whitmore." "He is not here," she replied, a careful truth. "Away on business. I am minding the place for him." Cole Garrett chuckled, a nasty sound. "You look like you just got off the train, little lady." "I did," Eliza said, her eyes sweeping over them. The station was a mess, blood all over the platform. The agent there was mighty jumpy. A heavy silence fell. One man's hand moved toward his gun. "That is no concern of yours," James said, leaning on his saddle horn. "Maybe not, but trouble like that tends to draw federal eyes." Almost as if he was warned, she added. The implications settled in the dust between them. James understood. If Daniel got away, he knew their faces. He could be anywhere, planning his own justice. "Well then," James said, sitting up straight, "you just tell him we came by. And Miss Moore," his voice turned to ice, "this place is not safe for outsiders." "I appreciate the warning," she said, steady as a rock, "but I have seen worse." They rode off slow, making a point of it. Eliza did not move until their dust was gone. Then her knees started to buckle. Martha was right there with a coffee cup. "Brave or foolish, girl?" "Maybe they are the same," Eliza whispered. "They think Daniel is running. That gives us a little time." "Not much," Martha said, her face grim. "When they find out he is right here, they will be back." "Let us see about defending it," Eliza said, turning for the house. They had 6 rifles, not nearly enough. Thomas and Miguel showed her the property's weak spots while Martha took stock of their supplies. In the bedroom, Daniel slept, his breathing shallow. Liza changed his bandages every hour, feeling the weight of her choice. She had saved him, but now his fight was hers. During one visit, she spoke to his still form. "You should have let me go," she whispered. "Now we are both tangled in this mess." His eyes opened, surprisingly clear. "Do not regret it," he rasped, each word an effort. "Please." Eliza froze. "You are awake." "In and out," he said, his eyes finding hers. "I heard enough. Heard you." "Jem, face down Garrett's crew by yourself." "Well, you were not in any shape to do it," she said. A faint smile touched his lips. "You could have left me there." "I'm not good at doing what I should," Eliza admitted, sinking into a chair. "Besides, I gave you my word." She looked at him, her voice sharp. "Are you worth all this? Because I have bet everything on it." Daniel held her gaze. "I hope so," he said quietly. "I built this ranch on fair dealings, but I made enemies. Now Martha, Thomas, and Miguel are in danger because of me." "That is because the Garretts are greedy men," she shot back. "I could have sold out," he said, his tone bitter. "I could have walked away." "But you did not," Eliza said, leaning in. "And now you are alive. I know about bullies. I watched them ruin my father. I learned one thing from that. Giving bullies what they want just makes them want more." "So what is the plan?" Daniel asked. "We fight smart," she said, pacing. "No," Daniel interrupted, his voice gaining strength. "No gunfights. I will not have my people die for me. Martha has been here since my father's time. I will not put her through that." "So we just wait for them to come back?" Eliza asked, frustrated. There has to be another way, he said, trying to sit up. A way that does not end with a shootout. He looked at her. Tell me, when your father fought those bullies head on, did it work? The question landed like a punch. Eliza remembered the pointless fights that only bled him dry. No, she said softly, it did not. Then we have to find their weakness. Something that makes this fight too costly for them, Daniel said, exhausted. They have been buying up land, Eliza recalled, which means they are probably short on cash. They need our water to make it all work. Daniel's eyes lit with understanding. Without our creek, their new land is useless. That makes them desperate. Desperate enough to make mistakes, Eliza added. You said the station agent was nervous. That means he saw something. He is just too scared to talk. Exactly, Daniel said. If we can prove they ordered that ambush and get the federal marshals involved, the Garretts lose everything. Eliza's mind raced. But how can we gather proof while they are watching our every move? I have you, Daniel said, his voice full of trust. You faced down 3 of their men without blinking. If anyone can do this, it is you. The trust in his voice was a heavy weight. For the last year, everyone had told Eliza she was a burden. Now a man she barely knew was putting his life in her hands. I could fail, she whispered. Then we fail together. Daniel's grip was weak, but his hand was steady on hers. But I do not think you will. You are the most stubborn person I have ever met, and I have only known you for a day. Eliza actually laughed. You have no idea. Then show me. Show the Garretts what happens when they underestimate Eliza Moore. The plan took shape over the next 2 days as Daniel healed. Eliza rode to town with Thomas, not just for supplies, but to listen. She learned that the station agent had seen 3 riders near the platform that night. He could not see their faces in the dark, but he heard one of them say, make sure he does not get up. Later, while asking the town doctor about bullet wounds, he mentioned treating a man for a splintered hand just the other day. A man, he said, named Wade Tucker. The county clerk mentioned James Garrett had been asking about how to claim abandoned land. That, plus a ranch hand with a fresh powder burn, started painting a grim picture. Martha watched Eliza full of wonder. You're building a case. No, Eliza said, laying out her notes. I am building a trap. She explained, they feel safe with no body and no witnesses. But if Daniel shows up alive, they will get scared. They will make a move to finish the job for good. Martha's expression grew grim. That's a mighty dangerous game. It is, Eliza agreed, but fear makes men careless. It makes them do things they cannot talk their way out of. She glanced toward the bedroom where Daniel rested. He just needs to be strong enough to face a judge. Martha worried, will he even make it that long? Eliza's voice was firm. He has to. We all do. Eliza looked straight at Martha. The Garretts are getting restless. Soon they will come checking to see if Daniel is truly gone. We have to act before they do. Their chance came 3 days later. News arrived that James Garrett was holding a big meeting for all the local ranchers. He called it a talk about irrigation, but it was really a power grab for the valley's water. With Daniel gone, the others would surely fold. Daniel was getting stronger, walking a little with help. His mind was clear. When Eliza told him of the meeting, his jaw clenched. He is making his play while they all think I am dead. That is exactly why you are going, Eliza said calmly. You will walk right in there, alive as can be, and you will call him out in front of everybody. I can hardly stand on my own. We will help you stand, she insisted. You have to show them you survived and that you are not afraid. You need to push Garrett until he does something foolish in front of witnesses. Martha just shook her head. You are sending him to his own funeral. No, Eliza corrected. It is the only weapon we have got. The truth. She turned to Daniel. You wanted to avoid a war. This is how. We drag it all into the open where they cannot hide. Daniel looked at her, weighing the plan. You have got this all figured out. It is all I have thought about, she admitted. And if he tries to finish it there, the territorial judge will be present. Even Garrett cannot get away with murder in front of him. The next morning was crisp and cold. Thomas helped Daniel get dressed, while Miguel prepared the wagon with soft cushions for the rough ride. Martha checked his bandages, her worry plain to see. Are you certain about this? Daniel's answer was honest. No, but she is right. We cannot hide and we cannot win a fair fight. Eliza came out of the house in a simple gray dress, the only decent one she had. Wool dress. With her hair done up, she looked like a respectable schoolmarm, which was just the part she wanted to play. Her eyes met Daniel's across the yard. No words were needed. They both knew they were risking it all. "Ready?" she asked. He gave a small smile. "No, but let us go." The 2-hour ride to the Garrett Ranch was hard on Daniel. Every bump sent a shock of pain through him. To distract him, Eliza asked about his father. "He came west in '49 for gold," Daniel began, shifting uncomfortably. "He found this valley instead. Saw a future here when others saw nothing. He spent 20 years building this place, fighting the land and other men. Before he died, he made me promise I would never let it go." "Is that why you will not sell? Just the promise?" "No, he was right," Daniel said. "This land proves you can build something true in a world full of cheats." He then looked at her. "What about your father?" "Debt and empty promises," Eliza said, her tone sharp. "He was a master of illusion, and I loved him even when it meant lying to protect him. I will not ever make that mistake again." "Good," Daniel said quietly. "I do not want your lies. I just need your grit." Eliza could not help but smile. "I can do that." Soon the Garrett place came into view. It was a big, showy ranch with a house too grand for the territory. Wagons and buggies filled the yard. As Thomas pulled their wagon up, the talking stopped cold. Every single eye landed on Daniel Whitmore, standing there with Eliza's help. Plain as day and breathing, James Garrett stood on the porch, a whiskey glass frozen near his mouth. For a split second, shock was written all over his face before he masked it with a smirk. "Well now, Daniel Whitmore, we heard you were laid up." "I'm sure you did," Daniel's voice boomed across the yard, strong despite his pain. "Seeing as how you are the ones who laid me up." The charge settled over the crowd like a storm cloud. Men shuffled their feet and looked away. The sharp-eyed territorial judge stepped up. "That is a heavy accusation, Mr. Whitmore." "It was a heavy crime, Your Honor," Daniel replied, standing taller. 4 days ago, your men shot me twice at the station and left me for dead. They were mistaken." Garrett's smile was fixed, but his knuckles went white around his glass. "I had nothing to do with it." "I am not suggesting. I am telling you as fact," Daniel said, taking a hard step forward with Eliza's help. "You failed to get my water rights with lawyers and with money. So you decided to try murder." "That is a lie. You have no proof." "Do I not?" Eliza's voice cut through the air, cool and steady. "The station agent saw 3 riders leaving that platform. The town doctor patched up one of your ranch hands for a burn that looked a whole lot like a gun was fired right up close. And the county clerk remembers you asking how to claim abandoned land. Real specific questions about what happens when a man just up and vanishes." She watched Garrett's face, saw his smug look twist into something mean. "Who in the hell are you, he snarled. "Nobody special," Eliza said, her voice cold as a winter morning. "Just the woman who found Mr. Whitmore bleeding out and decided he wasn't going to die. That makes me the reason your little plan went sour. It's why he is standing right here, ready to tell a judge exactly what you did." The silence was so thick you could cut it. Then the whole room exploded. Men started yelling and the judge hollered for order. Garrett's face turned beet red with fury. "You can't prove a thing. It's his word against mine." Before anyone could move, Daniel swung. His fist cracked against Garrett's cheek, sending the big man stumbling back. "Careful now," Daniel said, his voice low and dangerous. "That woman saved my life. You insult her again, and I'll finish this, judge or no judge." Eliza grabbed his arm to keep him from falling. "Easy," she whispered. "Let the man dig his own hole." And Garrett was doing just that. He'd lost all control, spewing threats in front of everyone. The judge, a man used to being in charge, stepped right between them. "That's enough. Mr. Garrett, Mr. Whitmore, you'll both come with me. We are going to handle this with the law." He then looked straight at Eliza. "And you, miss, will give your statement as well." "Of course, Your Honor." While the judge started getting things organized, Daniel sagged against her. She'd been holding him up with pure grit, but he was all but spent. Martha and Miguel appeared right then, and together they got Daniel to the wagon. He looked pale as a ghost, but his eyes shined with a little victory. "We did it," he whispered. "You did it." "We are not done yet," Eliza said, wiping his brow. "But we got him rattled. We got the judge and we got witnesses." "How did you know he would lose his temper like that?" Daniel asked. "Men like him always do," she said with a grim smile. "They can't stand being challenged, especially by a woman they figure is beneath them. They look down on anyone who is not in their reflection." Daniel found her hand, his grip weak but firm. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet," Eliza said softly. "Wait until this is really over. Wait until you're safe and the Garretts are facing what they've done. Then you can thank me." "And after that?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "What happens then?" That was the one question she'd been dodging. She came to this land to marry a man she'd never met, trading her freedom for a roof over her head. Instead, she'd found a different man, fought his fight, and discovered a strength she never knew she had. What came next was a blank page. "I don't rightly know," she admitted, "but I reckon we'll figure it out together." A real smile touched Daniel's lips. "I would like that." As they pulled away from the Garrett place, Eliza glanced back. James Garrett was on his porch, surrounded by the law, watching his world start to fall apart. For the first time since she'd left Boston, she felt a glimmer of hope. They had won the first round. The fight was far from over. There would be trials and threats before it was all said and done. But they were still standing. They had proved that sometimes the best weapon wasn't a pistol, but just plain refusing to quit. Beside her, Daniel finally slept. His head rested on her shoulder. And Eliza just drove on, facing a future she couldn't see, but was no longer afraid of. The ranch felt different when they got back, like the air itself had changed. Daniel slept the whole ride home, his body finally giving in to the pain and weariness. Eliza watched his face in the twilight, seeing the lines of hardship around his eyes and the stubborn set of his jaw. Martha met them in the yard, her face a mask of worry, until she saw Daniel was all right. They got him inside and into bed, where he mumbled something about water rights before falling into a deep sleep. "He pushed himself too far," Martha said, checking his bandages. "Fever's trying to come back." "We had to," Eliza answered, pressing a cool cloth to Daniel's forehead. The judge saw it all. He heard Garrett's threats with his own ears. "That is worth a little fever." "I hope you are right," Martha said, her voice heavy. "Because if you are wrong, all we did was paint a big red target on this whole place." Those words echoed in the quiet kitchen later on. Eliza sat with a cup of coffee she was too tired to drink. Thomas and Miguel were out checking the fence lines, making sure no trouble was creeping up in the dark. The old house groaned around her, and she felt the full weight of the week settle on her shoulders. It had been exactly 7 days since she arrived in Nebraska. 7 days. A week ago, she was a woman with $4 to her name and a marriage arranged by mail. Now what was she? A ranch hand who'd never worked a ranch? A protector who saved a man with nothing but stubbornness? A woman building a case against killers? It was so crazy it should have been funny, but instead, it felt like this was where her whole life had been leading. "You ought to get some sleep," Martha said from the doorway. "You look about done in yourself." "I don't think I know how anymore," Eliza said with a tired smile. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him bleeding on that platform, and I see myself deciding to stay." "You regret it?" "No," Eliza admitted. "That is the strange part. I don't regret any of it. I should. I should be wishing I had found Marcus Brennan and the safe life I came for. But all I feel is alive." Martha sat down across from her, her weathered face full of understanding. "You feel alive for the first time in a long while, maybe ever." The truth of it struck Eliza hard. "Yes. This land does that," Martha said. "To the ones that make it anyway. It burns away everything that is not real, leaving just who you truly are. Shows you who you really are." Martha's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "I came here 30 years ago with my husband. He had a dream. The second winter got him, froze solid checking cattle in a blizzard. I could have run back east, but I stayed. Learned I was tougher than anyone ever let me be back home." "Do you miss it? The comfort?" Martha just shrugged. "Not enough to go back. Out here you make your own future. It is hard and terrifying, but it is yours." Eliza pictured Boston with its cramped rooms and even tighter futures, where a woman's worth was a name and a dowry. I do not think I could go back now. No, you have changed. Daniel saw it. That is why he trusted you. He saw someone who was done being sorry for taking up space. Martha stood up. Get some rest. You will need your strength for whatever the judge decides. But her sleep was filled with angry courtrooms and James Garrett's twisted face. She saw Daniel bleeding while she stood by, helpless. She woke with a gasp long before the sun, the house still and dark. Restless, she dressed and slipped out into the cool air. The prairie rolled out in all directions, huge and silent, under 1,000 blazing stars. Somewhere out there, the Garretts were plotting. The judge was weighing the facts, and a man named Marcus Brennan was likely wondering about the mail-order bride who never showed up. The thought of him gave her pause. She had come to marry him, bound by a contract she had not honored. She should have written days ago to explain or break the agreement. Instead, she chose Daniel's fight over her own promises, deciding her future without a word to the man who paid her way here. Could not sleep either. Eliza turned. Daniel was on the porch, a blanket around his shoulders. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp. You should be in bed. So should you. Yet here we are. He walked down the steps to stand beside her, watching the dawn as if it held all the answers. Does it? No, but at least it is honest. This land does not lie. It just is. Daniel took a deep breath, wincing. I have been thinking about what is next. The judge will want a full hearing, maybe a trial if he thinks there is a case against the Garretts. Eliza's voice was steady. We will need to get our story straight with the other witnesses, and be ready. The Garretts will not go down without a fight. That is not what I meant. Daniel turned to her. I meant what happens with you, with us. The words hung between them in the cold morning air. I do not know, Eliza said, her voice quiet. I came here to marry Marcus Brennan. That was the plan. And instead, she gestured around them, helpless. Instead, I found you half dead and made one questionable choice after another. Questionable. A small, real smile touched Daniel's lips. You saved my life and built a legal plan that might just work. If that is questionable, I would hate to see what you call a good decision. Eliza almost laughed. You know what I mean. I had commitments and I ignored them. Because you chose to, Daniel said softly. You chose to stay. Nobody made you. You did what you thought was right, and I will be grateful for it my whole life. He paused. But that does not mean you owe me anything now. If you want to find Brennan and finish what you started, I will understand. I will even help you get there. The offer was genuine. She could hear it, and it was the sensible thing to do. Fulfill her contract, get the security she had traveled so far to find, walk away from the danger at Whitmore Ranch. But she had learned a thing or two about sensible choices lately. I do not want sensible anymore, she said. I do not want a life that is arranged and safe. I want... The words stuck in her throat. Daniel waited, his eyes fixed on her face. I want to see what happens if I stay here, she finally said. If I choose this, choose you, the fight, the not knowing, and the chance that we might actually win this thing. I am not choosing you because you need saving. I am choosing you because fighting alongside you, I found the person I was meant to be. The silence that followed felt heavy and important. Then Daniel took her hand, his grip weak but firm, and raised it to his lips. It was an old-fashioned gesture, but it felt right. Then stay. Fight with me. Help me save this ranch. His voice grew thick with emotion. And when this is over, let us see what we can build together. It was not a proposal, but a promise of a possibility. Eliza nodded, agreeing to a future she could not see. As the sun finally crested the horizon, they stood together and watched the new day begin. The judge arrived 3 days later with 2 deputies. His grim face said he had already made up his mind about a few things. Martha led them into the parlor, which they had tidied up for the occasion. Eliza helped Daniel into clothes that were not quite so loose on him anymore. Remember, Eliza whispered, adjusting his collar. Stay calm. Stick to the facts. Do not let them make you angry. Yes, ma'am. Daniel's smile was a little crooked. You know, for someone with no legal training, you have become quite a strategist. I learned from watching my father's creditors. She stepped back. You look like a man a judge would believe. You look like you could talk a man into anything. Judge Harrison Carter took his coffee and sat in the best chair, looking like a man with an unpleasant job to do. His deputy stood by the door, a clear warning. Mr. Whitmore, Miss Moore, I appreciate you making the time to see me. Judge Carter's voice was all business. I have spent the last few days looking into the trouble at the train station and the claims made against James Garrett and his men. Daniel leaned in. And what did you find, Your Honor? Enough to be concerned, but maybe not for the charges you were hoping for. The judge's face gave nothing away. The station agent saw riders, but he can't say who. The doctor's word on the powder burn points a finger, but it won't hold up in court. And those county records are interesting, but they don't prove a crime. Eliza's heart sank, but then the judge continued, his tone shifting just enough to catch her ear. I have also had words with other folks in this valley. It seems the Garretts make a habit of pushing people around. And when I asked about that public meeting, several people confirmed James Garrett acted like a guilty man, not an innocent one. So what are you telling us? Daniel's voice was tight. I am saying that while I cannot file criminal charges right now, I can and will make sure the Garretts know they are being watched. One more incident, one more threat, and I will bring down the law on them with everything I have got. Carter's eyes were like stone. I am also issuing a court order. They cannot touch the water rights on your land without my say-so. If they want your water, they will have to fight for it in my courtroom, and I am not inclined to side with them. It was not a total victory, but it was a shield. It was a warning to the Garretts that they could not do as they pleased. Thank you, Your Honor, Eliza said, finding her voice. We understand the limits, and we are grateful for the justice you have given us. The judge turned to her. Miss Moore, I have a question. You are not from around here. What is your part in all this? It was a fair question. I was traveling here to marry a man, she explained carefully. I found Mr. Whitmore hurt and helped him. In doing so, I learned about the situation and chose to help him build his case. That is a far cry from getting married. That arrangement is over. The words felt right. I sent a letter to Mr. Brennan, releasing him from his promise. I am staying right here at the Whitmore Ranch. She paused, unsure what to call her new role. As my partner, Daniel said, his voice firm, in running this ranch and defending it, Miss Moore has proven her worth, and I have asked her to stay. The explanation was neat and professional, answering any questions about why she was there. Carter gave a slow nod of acceptance. Very well. My report will be filed with the territorial governor. The Garretts will get notice of the court order within the week. He stood up. I suggest you stay watchful, Mr. Whitmore. Men like James Garrett do not take losing well. After he left, they stood in the quiet parlor. They had won, for now. It was enough to give them room to breathe. Martha brought in coffee with a knowing smile. So, partners, is it? It felt like the right word, Daniel said, but his eyes asked Eliza a question she did not yet have an answer for. The next week felt almost peaceful. Daniel got his strength back, and the ranch work was endless. Fences needed mending and cattle needed moving. Eliza dove right in, learning everything she could. She had a knack for bringing order to chaos. The ranch's books had been a mess, so she spent her evenings fixing them, tracking every dollar. Daniel would find her late at night, surrounded by papers. You are supposed to be recovering, not starting a revolution in my office. Your books needed a revolution. You have lost money on feed for 2 years because no one checked other suppliers. She laid out the numbers for him. Switch to the Miller outfit over in Scottsbluff, and you will save almost 30%. How did you figure this out? I read all the contracts. Then I wrote to 3 other suppliers for their prices. Eliza grinned at his stunned face. You are not the only one who is stubborn about building something to last. But life was not just about numbers and cattle. The Garretts, boxed in by the judge, found smaller ways to cause trouble. A fence would be cut, costing them a day's work. A supplier in town would suddenly refuse to give them credit, and a couple of times, riders would just sit on the edge of their property, watching. It was a clear message that the fight was not finished. Daniel wanted to ride out and face them, but Eliza urged him to be patient. They are trying to make you do something foolish, she said, watching the distant figures. They want an excuse to claim they were just defending themselves. We write down everything. Every cut wire, every threat, every time a supplier turns us away. We build a case showing a pattern of harassment, and then we take it back to the judge. That could take months. Then it takes months, she insisted. We are playing the long game. They want us to snap, to make a mistake. We will not give them the satisfaction. It was a smart plan, but it was hard on everyone. Thomas was always on edge. Miguel took to sleeping in the barn to guard the animals. And Daniel grew quiet, the burden of it all heavy on his shoulders. One evening, Eliza found him in the barn, his face a mask of pure exhaustion. "Talk to me," she said softly. "I'm starting to wonder if any of this is worth it." The confession seemed to pain him. All this fighting, this standing guard, asking good folks to risk their necks for a piece of land. Maybe I ought to just sell, take what they offer, and walk away before somebody else gets hurt. Do you think I should? I just don't know anymore. My father built this ranch believing it mattered, that a man's hard work and honest deals meant something. But what if he was wrong? What if this is just dirt, not worth all the trouble? Eliza sat beside him on a bale of hay, picking her words with care. "When I found you on that train platform, I could have kept on walking. Probably should have. It would have been the smart, safe thing to do. But I didn't. I'd spent too many years watching my own father give up little by little until there was nothing left of him." She turned to look him square in the eye. "This ranch is more than just dirt. It's proof that a person can build something and hold on to it. It proves that money and power don't always win, that regular people can stand up to bullies and make it through. Your daddy knew that, and deep down, I think you do too. Otherwise, you would have sold out years ago. And if I'm just being a stubborn fool, risking everyone for my own pride, then at least you'll go down fighting," she said, her voice softening. "You won't have just handed it over. But I don't think you're wrong, Daniel. I think you're doing what has to be done." Daniel was quiet for a long while, then he reached out for her hand. "How'd you get to be so smart?" "I'm not smart," she said, squeezing his fingers. "I'm just tired of watching good things get torn down because nobody was willing to fight for them. We're going to win this, Daniel, not because we're stronger or richer, but because we're too damn stubborn to quit." The air between them was thick with unspoken feelings. Daniel pulled her into an embrace that was part comfort, part promise. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair, "for staying, for fighting with me." Eliza leaned against him, feeling the solid strength of him, the warmth of not being alone. And for the first time since she'd left Boston, she felt like she might have finally found a home. The breakthrough came from a place they never expected. Thomas came back from town one afternoon with big news. "Wade Tucker's in jail," he said, practically buzzing with excitement. "The Garrett's foreman. He got drunk, picked a fight, and started blabbering about things he shouldn't have. The sheriff took him in, and folks are saying he said some mighty interesting things about what really happened at that train station." Daniel and Eliza shared a meaningful look. "Did the sheriff write it down?" "Down? Well, that bartender wrote down every word Wade Tucker said. He even had 3 witnesses put their names to it." Thomas smiled wide. "It seems Wade was carrying a heavy conscience about shooting a man in the back. A little whiskey was all it took for him to confess the whole dirty scheme. That confession was the break they needed." Judge Carter quickly had the testimony officially recorded. The foreman, staring down a long prison sentence, cut a deal to testify against the Garretts. The trial itself was fast and decisive. Wade Tucker laid out the entire plot, from James Garrett's order to the ambush at the station. All the evidence Eliza had gathered suddenly painted a very clear picture for the jury. The Garrett's high-priced lawyers could not hide the simple, ugly truth. They tried to murder a man for his water. The jury was out for less than 3 hours. Eliza sat beside Daniel as the guilty verdict was read. James Garrett's arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by pure disbelief, then rage. He had gambled on fear and lost everything. Outside, the sun felt warm and hopeful on Eliza's face. Daniel squeezed her hand, his own steady and strong. "It is over," he said, sounding like he could hardly believe it. "This part is," Eliza replied. She looked from the courthouse to the man beside her. "Now we find out what comes next." And for the first time in a long while, she was excited to do just that. What came next was spring. The land transformed from brown to a brilliant green almost overnight. Wildflowers bloomed in a riot of color, and the creek at the heart of all the trouble ran full and clear. One morning, Eliza stood watching the sunrise and realized she had been at the Whitmore Ranch for half a year. 6 months since she found a dying stranger, and her entire life changed course. "Coffee is ready." Martha's voice broke the silence. "You are off in your own world again. What are you thinking so hard about?" "What look?" Eliza asked. "The one that says you are still trying to figure out where you fit." "You belong here," Martha stated plainly, pouring 2 cups of coffee. "You saved this ranch and you saved its owner. You are the best thing to happen to this place. The only person who does not see it is you." Before Eliza could answer, a rider came into the yard. He was a young man, a stranger, and he carried a message. Daniel came out of the barn to meet him. Eliza watched from the window as they talked. The news seemed to make Daniel stand taller, his shoulders stiffening. When he came inside, his face was a blank mask, a look she knew meant trouble. "What is it?" she asked immediately. "It is a letter from Marcus Brennan," Daniel said, holding up the envelope. "The messenger said he has been searching for you for months." The name was a shock. Marcus Brennan. The man she was supposed to marry, the man she had left behind. She had sent a letter explaining everything but never heard back. She thought he had simply moved on. "You should open it," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "It is addressed to you," Daniel replied, handing it over. The letter was short and to the point. Marcus had heard about the trial and her involvement. He wrote, "I confess I am confused about your role at the Whitmore Ranch. I am concerned you may have been taken advantage of during a difficult time. As I paid for your journey, I feel responsible for your well-being. I will be in the area next week and would like to meet with you. I want to be certain that you are safe and that your current situation is your own choice." "Well," Eliza said after she finished reading, "that is a surprise." Daniel had been watching her face. "What does he want?" "He wants to meet, to make sure I have not been coerced into staying here." She looked at the letter again, "and maybe to offer me another choice." A heavy silence filled the kitchen. Martha had quietly slipped away, leaving them alone. The wind whispered outside. "Do you want another choice?" Daniel finally asked. It was the real question, the one they had both avoided for months. What were they to each other? What could they be? "I do not know," Eliza answered honestly, "not because I want to leave, but because I am not sure what my place is here. You called me your partner to the judge, but what does that truly mean?" "When you found me," Daniel began, his voice low, "I was ready to give up. I thought the Garretts would win and everything my father built would be gone. But you would not accept that. You refused to let me die, and you refused to let them win. You did not just save my life, Eliza. You reminded me why life was worth fighting for." He turned to face her. "I have spent these past months watching you make this place better, just by being in it. I have been trying to find the right way to ask you to stay, not out of duty and not out of gratitude, but because I want you here, because you make everything more real." He took her hand. "I know we met under the worst circumstances, but somewhere in all that fighting, I fell in love with you. I love your stubbornness and your courage." He looked her straight in the eye. "So when I say partner, I mean it in every way. In this ranch, yes, but also in building a life, a future, everything, with you. That comes with choosing to face things together." The words hung in the air between them, changing everything. Eliza felt tears welling up but blinked them back. "I need you to understand," she said. "When I came out here, I was running from debt, from shame, from a life that had fallen apart. I agreed to marry a stranger because I was out of options." She gave his hand a squeeze. "But staying here, fighting alongside you, that wasn't about surviving. That was about choosing to be someone I could be proud of. Someone who doesn't run from a hard fight or leave people in need." Her smile was gentle. "What I'm trying to say is, for the first time, I have real choices. Marcus Brennan is offering me one of them. A safe, sensible marriage. It would be comfortable and predictable." She paused. "And I have no interest in it whatsoever, because I've learned I don't want safe. I want this. The struggle, the not knowing, the building of something that matters. I want you." Daniel's breath hitched. "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more," Eliza said, the tears finally fallen, but they were good tears, the kind that come from speaking a hard truth. "I love you. I love how you refuse to give up, How fair you are, how you treat a ranch hand with the same respect you'd give a judge. I love that you trusted me when I was a nobody and let me fight with you instead of trying to shield me from it." She gave a shaky laugh. "I even love this crazy ranch and all its hard work because it's ours. We're building it together." He kissed her then, pulling her close with a certainty that left no room for doubt. When they finally parted, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me. Not out of a deal, but because we choose each other." "Yes," the word came out easy and true. "Yes, I'll marry you." From the direction of the kitchen, Martha's voice rang out, full of satisfaction. "About damn time. I was starting to think you two would dance around each other forever." They both laughed, breaking the tension. But reality soon set in. "I still have to meet with Marcus Brennan," Eliza said. "Not because I'm having second thoughts, but because he deserves the truth. He paid my way here and made a deal in good faith. I owe him an explanation, face to face." Daniel's jaw set for a second, but he nodded. "You're right. When's he coming?" His letter said next week. "Then we have some time to get ready, and maybe make a few plans of our own." The week flew by in a mix of ranch chores and wedding plans. Martha had an opinion on everything, happy as a clam to finally be organized in a proper celebration. "The parlor's too cramped and the barn's too dusty," she declared. "We'll have it outside by the creek. That's what this whole fight was for, after all." "Seems only right." Eliza felt a little overwhelmed. "It doesn't have to be a big to-do, Martha. Just something simple." "It needs to be right," Martha insisted. "You saved this ranch and Daniel, and you've earned the respect of this whole valley. People are going to want to celebrate with you." "You let them," and she was right. As news of their engagement got around, neighbors started showing up with well wishes and offers of help. Women she barely knew brought bolts of cloth for a dress. Men who'd seen her stand up to the Garretts offered to build a wedding arbor. The judge himself sent a note saying he'd be honored to officiate. "They respect you," Daniel said one evening as they watched the sunset. "Not because you're marrying me, but because you earned it all on your own. You stood your ground when it would have been easier to run. That means something out here." "I'm still getting used to it," she admitted, leaning against him. "Being seen as capable instead of as a problem to be managed. Back in Boston, I was just a daughter who failed to make a good match. Here, I'm just Eliza." "You're brilliant, stubborn, fearless Eliza," he said, kissing the top of her head. "And that's exactly the woman I want to spend my life with." Marcus Brennan arrived on a Thursday. He drove a fine buggy and wore the clothes of a successful man. He was about 40, handsome enough, with a face that spoke more of reliability than of passion. Eliza met him in the yard with Daniel standing a few feet behind her, showing his support but letting her lead the conversation. He stepped down from the buggy, holding his hat. "Miss Moore, thank you for meeting me. Mr. Brennan, I appreciate you coming all this way." Eliza led him toward the house. "Would you like to come in?" They sat in the same parlor where the judge had delivered his news. Brennan took a cup of coffee and looked around the simple, well-kept room. This was a working ranch, not a fancy estate. "This is not what I pictured," he said. "What did you picture?" "I'm not sure. Something more desperate, I suppose. Or maybe something grander." He looked directly at her. "From what I heard, you were quite the force at the trial. I am trying to square that with the woman who answered an ad for a wife. They are the same person," she said. "I am just in a place that allows me to be more than I was before." Brennan nodded. "I read the court records. You built a whole legal case, found evidence, and organized witnesses. That is not something just anyone can do. I learned out of necessity. Watching my father's business partners taught me how the law can be used as a weapon. I just pointed it in a different direction." "And Mr. Whitmore?" Brennan asked, his eyes glancing toward Daniel in the doorway. "What is he to you?" The question was blunt, but Eliza did not mind. She valued honesty. "He is the man I am going to marry. Not because I need his ranch, but because I choose him and the life we plan to build." She looked Brennan right in the eye. "I know that is not what you hope to hear. I am sorry for the trouble this has caused you, but I will not pretend I feel any different." Brennan was quiet for a long moment. When he finally looked up, he seemed more thoughtful than angry. "I will not lie, I am disappointed. When I put out that advertisement, I was hoping for someone with your intelligence and grit, someone to build with. He gave a small smile. But I wanted a partner, not a possession. And it is clear you have found a real partnership here. I am sorry, Eliza said, and she truly was. You seem like a good man. You deserve someone who chooses you with their whole heart. I do, and so do you. Brennan stood and offered his hand. I wish you both the best, truly. And thank you for being honest with me now, instead of later. She shook his hand, feeling a great weight finally lift. Thank you for... After Brennan rode off, Eliza just stood in the yard, watching his buggy fade over the hill. Daniel came and stood right beside her, his presence a comfort. How are you feeling? He asked. Relieved, she said. A little sad for him, I suppose, but mostly, certain. She turned to him, certain about this, about us, about every choice we are making. Good, Daniel said, pulling her into his arms, because I am not letting you go, not now and not ever. They were married 3 weeks later. It was a perfect May morning, the kind where the prairie just had to show off all its greens and golds. Martha was right about the spot. The creek was a natural place to gather, with cottonwood trees lining the banks, their leaves just starting to open. Neighbors came from 20 miles around, filling the air with talk and laughter. It was the kind of celebration folks on the frontier did best, full of heart and good sense. The women brought enough food to feed an army, and the men set up benches in the shade. Children ran wild, their joy a part of the day. Eliza got ready in the room that had been hers since that first desperate night. The dress was simple but lovely, cream-colored cotton with fine stitching at the collar and cuffs. Martha had woven wildflowers into her hair. When Eliza saw herself in the mirror, she hardly knew the strong woman looking back. You look beautiful, Martha said, her voice thick with emotion. You look like a woman who knows exactly who she is and what she wants. I do, Eliza whispered, gently touching the flowers. I know this all happened so fast. It must seem strange. It is not strange. It is right, Martha said, gripping her shoulders and meeting her eyes in the mirror. You two found each other in the worst way possible and built something real out of it. That is a miracle. The ceremony was short and honest. Judge Carter led it with the same straightforward authority he had shown at the trial. Daniel stood tall, the last signs of his injuries gone, his eyes locked on Eliza's face as they said their vows. I promise to stand with you, in hard times and in good, to trust you, to value your strength, and to build a life with you worth keeping. His voice was steady and sure. I promise to love you, not in spite of your stubbornness, but because of it. Eliza felt tears well up, but her own voice was clear. I promise to fight beside you for what matters, to challenge you and to support you. I promise to love you with the same fierce heart you showed this land, and to build a future with you that neither of us could make alone. When the judge declared them married, the cheer from the crowd must have carried to the next county. Daniel kissed her with a passion that made some of the older women chuckle. The party that followed went on late into the evening, with food and dancing under the trees. Eliza danced with one partner after another. She danced with the ranch hands who had seen her learn to ride, and with neighbors who had stood by her at the trial. They all spoke of her courage and the future she was building. Thomas pulled her aside for a moment, his weathered face serious. I need to tell you something. That first night, when you drove that wagon for 6 miles in the dark with Mr. Whitmore bleeding out, I did not think you would make it. He took her hand. I have never been so glad to be wrong. You are the best thing to happen to this place since his father first staked his claim. Thank you, Thomas, Eliza said, truly touched. As the sun set, painting the sky with streaks of red and gold, Daniel found her by the creek. He wrapped his arms around her, and they stood in a comfortable silence, listening to the music and laughter behind them. Are you happy? He asked softly. Terrified, she admitted with a small laugh. But yes, I'm very happy. She turned in his arms. I keep thinking about that train platform, about finding you and deciding to stay. If I had just walked away. But you did not, Daniel said, cupping her face. You chose to fight, and for both of us, that choice changed everything. Any regrets? Not a single one, he said, and kissed her sweetly. Though I might regret it when you make some new decision about the cattle. Eliza laughed, a sound full of freedom. Fair enough, And I will reserve the right to argue when you try to fix everything yourself instead of asking for my help. So we are going to argue? All the time, she said, pulling him closer. But we will do it together. That is what a partnership is. Being there for the hard talks, not just the easy celebrations. Above them, stars began to dot the sky. The prairie stretched out in every direction, vast and full of promise. And Eliza, who had arrived 6 months before with nothing but a small bag and $4, stood with her husband, ready for whatever came next. Loaded into wagons, Martha hustled Daniel and Eliza toward the house, telling them to get some rest, then took charge of the cleanup like a general. In their quiet bedroom, Eliza watched the last of the lanterns vanish over the ridge. Daniel came up behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders. What is on your mind? Just thinking I made the right choices. Every single one from the moment I stayed on that platform. She covered his hands with hers, and that I am ready for whatever is next. Good, he said, pulling her to her feet, because my plans for what is next all have you in them. Do they? They do. He kissed her, and she felt a love forged in hardship and a future they would build together. Outside, the prairie night settled peacefully over the Whitmore Ranch, and the creek just kept on flowing, same as it always did. Daniel knew the land, and Eliza had a sharp mind for business. Together, they made the ranch thrive. They grew the herd, got better deals, and earned a name as honest folks who kept their word. But their real legacy was the water. Within a year, Eliza had drawn up legal agreements with all the downstream ranchers. Everyone got fair access to the creek, and everyone helped take care of it. What the Garretts tried to take with Vadlin, Eliza and Daniel turned into a model of neighbors working together. 3 years later, the territorial governor paid them a visit. You are turning water rights into democracy, he said. That is either brilliant or plain crazy. Eliza, expecting their second child, just smiled from her seat on the porch. It is just practical. Fighting wastes time. Cooperating helps everyone get ahead. And you got these tough old ranchers to agree? I showed them the numbers. Folks are plenty reasonable when you show them how working together is more profitable than feuding. She pointed to the contract on the table. Every rancher signs the same paper, same access, same duties. We settle our disputes by talking, not fighting. It is not that complicated. Daniel came out with lemonade, looking healthy and strong. What she is too humble to say, he told the governor, is that she spent 2 years visiting every single ranch to get everyone on the same page. Because it mattered, Eliza said, taking a glass. And because I want our children to inherit a real community, not just a piece of land. The governor looked at them, this surprising pair who had changed things with grit and know-how. You two should think about running for the legislature. No, thank you, Eliza said flatly. I have had enough of politics. I am happy right here, building this ranch and our family. After he left, Daniel took her hand. Are you sure about that? You would do a world of good, I am sure. I did not go through all that just to spend my days in rooms arguing with men who figure they know best. We have more important work right here. That work became clear as day when their daughter Sarah was born that fall. Eliza tried to handle motherhood the same headstrong way she handled everything else. But she soon learned babies do not care about plans. One night, Martha found her walking the floor with a screaming Sarah, looking completely worn out. Give me that child, Martha said, taking the baby. You have been up for 3 nights. Go get some sleep. I do not know what I am doing wrong. Eliza's voice broke. I can stand up to killers, but I cannot even calm my own child. That is because a baby does not care how smart you are. She just needs you, Martha said, rocking Sarah until her cries softened. You are trying to fix her like a leaky faucet when she just needs you to be her mama. The words stung. Eliza fell into a rocking chair and finally let the tears come. What if I am no good at this? What if saving the ranch makes me a terrible mother? Then you will learn, Martha said softly, just like you learned everything else. I was scared every day when I first came out here, but you figure it out. You have to. And Eliza did learn, not from books or plans, but through tired nights and messy days. She learned that loving someone meant letting go of control. Daniel watched her, full of quiet awe. One evening, he found her asleep in the rocker with Sarah. You are wonderful with her, he whispered. I am scared to death of her, Eliza said, her eyes still closed. scared I will mess up somehow, that I will not be enough. You took down the garrets and changed the water laws for the whole territory. But our little girl scares you? I cannot control her future, Eliza said, opening her eyes. I cannot protect her from every bad thing. What if the world tries to hold her down like it did me? Daniel knelt beside her. Then we will teach her what you taught me. We teach her that limits are just other folks' fears, and that plain grit can get you through most anything. We will raise her to know her own value and to fight for what is right, and we will trust that she has got your backbone to make her own way. 2 years later, their son William was born, turning a name that once brought shame into one of pride. Eliza's days were spent juggling the ranch and the children, her ledgers and her lullabies. One of the hands, Thomas, found her working on the budget while Sarah practiced her letters and the baby slept nearby. How do you manage it all, ma'am? He asked. Some days, not so well, she said without looking up. I just keep doing the next thing that needs to be done. But a real test came 5 years after they were married. Word got around that James Garrett had died in prison, but his brother Cole was back, trying to start up the family's old land grabs. That old familiar fear came creeping back, the kind that knows what some men are capable of. It seemed the Garretters were not the type to give up. The fight Eliza thought was over was maybe just a short break. Daniel found her that night down by the creek, looking at the same water men had been willing to kill for. Her face carried the weight of battles she thought were long past. Daniel told her softly, "He cannot touch us. The agreements are solid, and the whole valley is with us." Eliza's voice was tight. "I know that in my head, but I keep thinking about Sarah and William. What if this becomes their fight? What if we just kicked the can down the road?" She turned to him, and he saw that same sharp mind that saved his ranch start to work. "We have to finish this," she said, "not with guns, but by making sure the Garretts can never threaten this valley again." In the weeks that followed, Eliza met with lawmakers and ranchers all over the territory. She gathered stories, built alliances, and drafted a law to make their water agreements official and permanent, protecting them from greed and power. The work was hard and kept her from her children more than she liked, but she pushed on with that same fire she had since arriving on that train. For 3 long months, the legislature debated the Water Rights Protection Act. Cole Garrett and his rich friends hired lawyers to kill it, calling it government overreach. But Eliza had learned that truth, when backed by facts, was stronger than money and threats. She stood before the lawmakers and laid out how one man's control of water led to violence, and how sharing it had brought peace and prosperity. "The choice you have is simple," she told them. "Do you want a territory where the rich and powerful take what they want? Or do you want one built on cooperation, where everyone has a chance to succeed because we all look out for each other?" The act passed, just barely. With that vote, Cole Garrett's plans to control the valley were finished for good. The law Eliza helped create even became a model for other territories, proving that justice on the frontier could be about more than just a quick draw. When she finally came home, Daniel was waiting in the yard with the children. Sarah, who was now 7 and just like her mother, ran up with a drawing of the creek. 5-year-old William just hugged her leg and would not let go. Sarah asked seriously, "Did you win?" Eliza knelt and pulled them close. "We won. We made sure the water belongs to everybody, not just the powerful. It is protected for you and for your children." Sarah nodded. "Good. Miguel said you were fighting bullies. I hate bullies." Eliza smiled. "Me too, sweetheart. That is why we have to stop them." That night, Daniel and Eliza sat on the porch, watching the stars. He said, "I have been thinking, we need to start planning for Sarah and William to take over this place for real. Not just the land, but all the knowledge and friendships we have built." He paused. "That means we need to start teaching them now." Eliza smiled in the dark. "Sarah is already asking about the account books, and William told Thomas he wants to learn about the cattle." "They are growing up," Daniel said. "I want them to have real choices, the kind of choices you had to fight so hard for." "Then we teach them everything," Eliza replied. "We show them that being capable matters more than being a man or a woman. We show them that stubbornness for a good cause is a fine thing, and we show them that building something is always better than tearing it down." And so the years went on. Sarah grew into a teenager with her mother's quick mind and her father's sense of right and wrong. William had a natural gift with both animals and people, earning the respect of men twice his age. One afternoon, Martha, now in her 70s, told Eliza, "You have built something good here, not just a ranch, but a way for people to live." "I had help," Eliza said. "We all did it together." "Maybe," Martha said, her hands never stopping their work. "But you were the one who started it all. You refused to accept things the way they were." Martha's hands were quick and sure. "That first night, when you drove Daniel home, I thought you were the craziest woman alive. Turns out you were just the bravest." "I was scared the whole time," Eliza admitted. "Being brave does not mean you are not scared," Martha said, looking right at her. "It means you decide something else is more important than the fear. You decided Daniel's life mattered more. Then the ranch mattered more. Then this whole valley. Each time you chose your purpose over your safety. And each time I was sure I would fail. But you did not," Martha said with a smile. "And now you have two children who think that kind of courage is just normal. That is your real legacy. Not the land or the law, but the example you set for them." When Sarah turned 17, she announced she was going to study law. The territorial university was finally letting women in, and she planned to be one of the first. "I want to do what you did," she told Eliza. "Use the law to help people, not to hurt them." Eliza felt a mix of pride and fear. "It will be hard. They will doubt you just because you are a woman." Sarah's smile was determined. "I know. You have been getting me ready for that my whole life. You taught me that being good at what I do will eventually beat their prejudice. I just have to be willing to outlast them." Daniel appeared in the doorway with William. "She sounds just like you," he said to Eliza. "I will take that as a compliment," Sarah replied, then turned to her brother. "What about you?" William stood tall. "I am staying here. I am going to learn everything from Dad and Thomas and Miguel. Someone has to run this place while you are off changing the world." "So we are a team," Sarah said, holding out her hand. "You take care of the land, and I will take care of the laws that protect it." William shook her hand firmly. "Deal." Watching them, Eliza felt a deep sense of peace. Her children knew who they were. They were raised to be builders, to fight for what was right, and to believe in themselves. The fear she had carried for so long finally began to fade. That night, lying next to Daniel, she thought about the long road from that train platform to this moment. She had saved a man, then a ranch, and then a valley, and in doing so, she had built a future she never thought possible. It was hard to believe that all of this started because she chose not to walk away. "Do you ever wonder," she asked quietly, "what would have happened if I had kept going that night? If I had found Marcus Brennan and lived that safe, predictable life?" "Every day," Daniel answered. "I think about dying on that platform, about the Garretts taking this ranch. I think about everything that would not exist if you had made the sensible choice. And I am so grateful you are the least sensible woman I have ever met." He held her tighter. "You did not just save my life, Eliza. You showed me what life could be. A partnership, not just being alone, a purpose, not just surviving." "I was so scared that night," she confessed. "Scared I would fail. Scared you would die anyway. Scared I was making the biggest mistake of my life." "And were you?" Eliza thought about all that had happened. The fear and the fighting, yes, but also the love, the building and the becoming. She thought of the creek, still running free for the whole valley. She thought of all the lives that were touched by her one choice. "No," she said at last, "not a mistake. It was the best decision I ever made, even when I did not know it." 10 years down the road, Eliza stood with Daniel, watching their daughter Sarah command the courtroom. The young woman was fighting for the very water rights her mother had pioneered, and she was winning on her own steam, with sharp arguments and solid proof. Eliza whispered to Daniel, a catch of pride in her voice, "She's got more fire than I ever did." He squeezed her hand, a knowing smile on his face. "She learned from the best. But this is what a legacy is, darling. It ain't a copy, it's an evolution." The court sided with Sarah, and the Water Rights Act became the law of the land. That night, the Whitmore Ranch was full of celebration. Thomas, his hair now silver but his spirit still strong, raised a glass. "To the woman who saved this ranch because she wouldn't turn her back on a stranger, And to the family she built from that one choice, may we all be half as stubborn. The warm laughter that followed brought a lump to Eliza's throat. She looked at the faces around the table and felt a deep, settled peace. Later, when the house was quiet, she walked down to the creek alone. The full moon turned the water to silver. This place, this water, was what it had all been for. I kept my promise, she whispered to the night. I didn't walk away. Footsteps announced Daniel's arrival. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. Any regrets? He asked softly. Not a single one that matters, she said, leaning back against his chest. I was just thinking about the woman who got off that train, expecting to marry a stranger. Instead of a husband, she found her purpose. She found herself. Turning in his arms, she looked him in the eye. Everything I am, everything our children are, it all started when I decided that one life mattered. Your life, she said. In saving it, I truly claimed my own. He looked at her, his voice thick with emotion. Then I owe you everything. No, Eliza said, her hand gently touching his cheek. We owe each other. You gave me the chance to be more than I was ever allowed to be. I gave you the partner you needed to do more than just survive. We built all this together. The ranch, the family, all of it. She held his gaze. That's what love really is. It ain't about being rescued. It's about two people choosing each other day after day. A shared purpose, not an obligation. Above them, the stars wheeled in the endless sky, and around them, the ranch they had built together was quiet for the night. And Eliza, who had arrived with nothing but $4 in desperation, stood beside her husband, whole and complete. Historians would write about Eliza Whitmore's work on water rights, noting her unlikely rise from a mail-order bride to a respected advocate. But the real story, the one that truly counted, was much simpler than that. It was about a woman who found a dying man and just refused to let him die. It was about a choice made in darkness that brought forth a lifetime of light. That single act of stubborn compassion turned fear into purpose and a crisis into a legacy. What saved Daniel Whitmore that November night was not luck or fate. It was a woman who believed one life mattered, who chose courage when safety was the easy path. By saving him, she rescued herself, transforming from a victim of her circumstances into the architect of her own destiny. The Whitmore Ranch still stands, passed down through generations who understand that land is a responsibility before it is a possession. The creek still flows freely, a gift to the entire valley, protected by the laws that grew from one woman's vision. Somewhere in the county records, a faded marriage certificate tells the official story of Daniel and Eliza, wed in November of 1867. But the true story is written in the land itself. It is the story of a woman who simply refused to walk away. The train that carried her into uncertainty did not deliver her to a stranger's mercy. No, that train delivered her home. The choice she made at the end of that line was the beginning of everything that ever truly mattered. She stood her ground, she fought her battles, and she proved that sometimes the scariest journey is the one that takes you exactly where you belong.